Hello and welcome. This is John Neary from ExpenseWatch.com. Joining me today as a special guest is one of our longtime customers and the current VP of Finance at the YMCA of South Florida. His name is John Puleio. John, I believe, has been with the YMCA since 2009, and that is right around the time where the YMCA adopted the spend management capabilities through ExpenseWatch. I wanted to introduce John, take John through a Q&A process, which will hopefully, maybe answer many of the questions that many of you have in the form of, if you're contemplating something along these lines, what did John contemplate before he made the decision? After he made the decision, what kind of return did he see? What were the challenges, etc. So John, welcome. I'm glad you're able to join us today. Could we just maybe start out, John, just for the audience that we have with us today, and for those that maybe not overly familiar with your organization, can you maybe just give us a brief background of the YMCA of South Florida, and then maybe a brief background of your experience with the Y?
So in 2009, I joined the Y, and in 2010, we were the YMCA of Broward County with revenues in the $30 million range. And so we were in a manual PO process, and we recognized that we needed to automate it. We chose ExpenseWatch for many reasons, but mostly because it's an automated process from the very beginning of a requisition all the way till the end of an invoice. It can be paperless if you want it to be. It doesn't have to be. You can print at any level, any step in that process. But we mostly do it as paperless. And now that since April 1st we merged with the Miami Y, so now we are a $47 million organization, and we have started to roll out ExpenseWatch in those locations. And I can tell you that the staff who is in charge of either creating a purchase order or approving it love the system and enjoy the fact that they can do everything online, and the approvals can happen in as quickly as 15 minutes rather than a week to 2 weeks with a manual process.
Great, John. If you can remember back that far, and I know I think you were joining the Y right around the time that ExpenseWatch was being adopted, but certainly wasn't fully adopted at that point in time, whether it be at the YMCA, at some of your previous experiences. Before you made the decision to move forward and automate the spending processes, can you talk to us about what the spend process was like, and maybe some of the challenges that the Y was facing, or again, maybe any other organization you worked with previous to the Y?
Sure. So at the Y, when I came, we were in a manual process. So basically, somebody had to create a manual PO on paper, had to have it approved by 2 or 3 approvers who were not necessarily in the same location. And so the piece of paper had to travel by courier to each approver before it made its way to accounting, where they could cut a check, or where back to the original person who created the purchase order, who could place the order with the vendor. All that process took at least a week, sometimes up to 2 or 3 weeks. I can't tell you how many POs were lost, vendors weren't paid, items weren't ordered. There was a breakdown in every stage of the process of purchasing. Our relationships are much better with this system with the vendors. They appreciate that a PO comes directly to their email or to a fax. You have both options with ExpenseWatch. Staff appreciates it. They get a reminder once it goes through the approval chain. The staff who generated the requisition gets a reminder that their requisition has been approved and that they can now generate a purchase order to their vendor. Even the packing list process is automated, where we generate the packing list to close a PO in ExpenseWatch, and so we're not chasing a piece of paper in a different location from where we cut checks to vendors. And now with South Florida Y, we have at least 12 locations that are ordering supplies, and many others that are off-site that aren't even YMCAs that we do business at, and we need to purchase supplies to run those locations.
Excellent. So when we engage with organizations, in most cases, those organizations have not automated any aspect of the spend process. They're considering it. They're supporting it through manual efforts right now. And one of the biggest concerns they have for all the folks that are supporting the process is ultimately it's just change, right? We're going from something that although it's not efficient for the business, people are somewhat comfortable with it, they're familiar with it, and now we're going to bring a technology in place and ask everybody to learn this new technology, and we're going to impose change on these folks. Help me understand what did the Y go through to help ease the concern around changing from a manual process to an automated one? Are there any key learnings you had to maybe share with the group, or any insight you can give people that would maybe put their minds at rest as to, hey, although it may be challenging and daunting, that it's certainly achievable, and it's not going to be that painful at the end of the day?
Sure. So the process is completely driven by finance, but we get the buy-in from all the people in operations because they're the staff that's ordering supplies. They're ordering office supplies, program supplies. The approval chain really helps because they can approve it. They don't have to be in the office. They could be off-site at a conference, and they can approve a requisition anywhere they want as long as they have an internet connection and they can log into ExpenseWatch. What we also did was a big help was we're able to load a vendor product list into ExpenseWatch, and also the budget, our budget from our accounting system into ExpenseWatch. So when they're building a requisition, they can see on that line item whether they have the money to spend, whether it's below budget or over budget. But the product list is the key because you can limit what they purchase with an approved list that's loaded in ExpenseWatch, and they cannot deviate from that list. There's permission levels that you have where you can limit who's able to add a vendor or even a product, so you don't have to have a situation like we had where we had multiple vendors in the same name, multiple products were being loaded, and so we could limit that, the data being clean. And so if they can only order one type of Post-it note, that's what's loaded on the product list, and they can only purchase that. They can't start picking and choosing their favorite items. Some items might be 5, 6 times more than the normal price. And so that's how we saved a lot of money in the first year, probably over $250,000 the first year that we implemented ExpenseWatch.
Very impressive. So just talking about, you gave us a lot of detail about where there were some advantage gains from going from what you were doing to ExpenseWatch. Just talk about the migration process period. I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most challenging, 0 being the easiest, how difficult of a transformation to go from what you were doing previous to ExpenseWatch, and then if you can just comment on how much you needed to rely on the team from ExpenseWatch versus you and your team taking responsibility on for yourself.
So the way we did it was we involved all the staff who had in various stages of the process. So we involved the operations people, finance people. From a scale of 1 to 10, it was probably a 3. ExpenseWatch was with us on every phone call. Every meeting we had, they called into, and it was the same person that called in. The team was the same people calling in, so we knew we had consistency throughout the process. So the implementation was literally, it was pain-free. The most painful part was probably adding the product list, but even that was simplified when we could load the product list from an Excel spreadsheet that was in ExpenseWatch's format, and all we had to do was automatically, we uploaded it, and we could upload an entire product list in minutes. So we did that for some key vendors that we use all the time. You know, T-shirt vendor, his products are loaded. Marketing vendor, their products are loaded. Office supplies, the approved, and it's all an approved list. So they cannot order off of that list unless they get permission from either their manager or me in finance before we even add an item. So it keeps the data clean, and it keeps a close eye on spending. So the implementation process was, yeah, like maybe a 3.
Great. So coming fast forward, 6 years removed from when you first adopted ExpenseWatch, Talk to us today about kind of the care and feeding that the system needs to have, and what level of support is required from ExpenseWatch, if any, just to kind of maintain and carry it forward. I know you're going through a challenging process right now where you just merged with the Miami Ys and you have some restructuring to do and add some entities, et cetera. In general sense, I mean, how much bandwidth or resource do you need to dedicate to just managing ExpenseWatch?
It's not very much at all. The training, when we're in the middle of training new staff, so we're training Miami staff, and it literally, I've done 3 trainings, and the longest one was less than an hour, and that was only because staff was more inquisitive and asked more questions. But it literally was less than an hour. They're turned on, they're using it, they love it, and we're processing even more POs now because we've added 3 locations in Miami. One of the locations we added was the aftercare program in Miami. So they have 50 sites that they order for, and so we loaded a project code, and each project code represents a school site. And so they also order by school site, and they know exactly how much they're spending at each school, and it's an automated process. The approval is happening, and POs are getting processed in less than a day. And the beauty of it is when they generate a requisition, it's going through an approval process. When all the approvers have approved it, then they get a reminder email back to them that the requisition was approved, and they immediately generate a PO to their vendor. And most of the vendors we deal with, the items are delivered the next day. So office supplies, program supplies, as long as they get the order in by the end of the day, they get their items the next day. And it's all automated by ExpenseWatch.
Excellent. So great feedback, John. I appreciate it. So just another 2 or 3 just real quick questions. And you mentioned a lot of capabilities that we support, and you associated them with how you benefit. Is there one key feature that ExpenseWatch has to offer that you feel like the organization has benefited from tremendously over all others? Or I don't know if it's an easy question to answer, but just given your experience and your use of the product, is there one thing that's kind of head and shoulders over everything else?
So it's very hard for me to even limit. I can't limit it to one, so I have 3. Like the approval chain is automated. I like that I can load my budget into ExpenseWatch so we can see the spending going on per each line item. And I love the paperless solution because we, as you know, if anybody's familiar with a YMCA, we generate tons and tons of paper a year. We don't have to print any paper to run ExpenseWatch. Some people still do because it's old habits die hard, but it really is a paperless solution. So those 3 really are the main ones that I like personally.
Great. Has the Y done any benchmarking or done anything internally to determine return on investment for the overall offering or for the capabilities that you're using?
So we did a benchmark in the first year, and that's how I came up with the $250,000 savings figure. Ongoing, we keep an eye on the processing time, how each location, how fast do they get from putting in a requisition to placing an order. We stop there because after they place the order, really the rest of the process is really relies on the finance staff. But for the people who are ordering product and services, we really benchmark when they generate a requisition and how fast they generate a PO. And there's no requisition that doesn't generate a PO in less than 3 days. Typically, it's even shorter than that, but for the most part, they can submit a requisition and they can generate a PO in less than 3 days. Sometimes, because we run all our purchases through ExpenseWatch and we have emergency items that come up, we can do the whole process in 15 minutes. As long as somebody has access to a computer and the approval chain, and we get the people in line in the approval chain, and they can approve it. The other thing I wanted to mention about the approval chain is when somebody goes on vacation, we can replace that person with another approval delegate, and that person will approve the requisitions for the person out on vacation. So we don't have to ask the person on vacation to still log in to ExpenseWatch and approve POs. So that has been a big help for us because it doesn't bog down the process because somebody's either out sick or on vacation.
Excellent feedback, John. Just in closing, is there any other closing thoughts or any data that you think the audience would be able to leverage just based upon what you've experienced?
If you're currently using a manual process today, that you owe it to yourself and to the staff to look at an automated process. The reason I would make sure that I look at ExpenseWatch is for what ExpenseWatch does, for the price point that they're at, and the value that you get, it really is a great deal. We're into our second 3-year contract right now. We are so pleased with it that we had no hesitation when the first 3 years was up to sign on for another 3 years.
Very good. Much appreciated, John. Great information. So really a great encapsulation of your experience, and really appreciate you taking the time to share your thoughts and experience with myself and the rest of the group here today.